Title: 7 months pregnant, my husband forced me to give up my seat for his mistress, but I was reborn. Chapter 1: The Spring Train Ride, A Second Chance. The rhythmic chug of the train echoed in my ears as I sat near the window, staring at the dimly lit landscape flashing by. My hands instinctively cradled my swollen belly, feeling the faint kicks of the tiny life within me. 7 months pregnant. 7 months of enduring my husband's coldness, his indifference, his betrayal. Adam sat beside me, scrolling through his phone with his usual detached expression. Across from us, Lily White, his secretary, his lover, clutched her coat tightly and sighed dramatically. "She looks so tired," Adam suddenly muttered. I knew what was coming before he even said it. "Give her your seat." A chilling déjà vu gripped me. The same words. The same cold tone. The same betrayal. But this time, I was different. In my past life, I had refused. I had pleaded, tried to reason with him. I had told him that I was exhausted, that standing for 10 hours on a moving train could harm the baby. But Adam had sneered, accused me of being selfish, and berated me until I finally stood. I had lost my child 2 days later. And yet, despite everything, I had still clung to him, hoping, praying that he would one day love me again. But he never did. Now, as I sat in that same seat with the weight of my past life crushing down on me, I made my choice. I smiled. "Of course," I said sweetly, standing up without hesitation. "Lily, you must be exhausted." Adam blinked, momentarily surprised by my easy compliance. Lily gave me a cautious glance before gracefully sinking into the seat I had vacated. "Thank you, dear sister," she said, her voice laced with fake gratitude. Sister. She always called me that as if we were close, as if she wasn't the woman who had helped my husband destroy me. I turned to Adam. "Since I'll be standing for the rest of the trip, can you hold my bag?" Adam frowned. "What?" "My bag," I repeated, forcing a warm, trusting smile. "It's heavy, and I don't want to strain myself." He hesitated but took it. "Good." I needed him off guard. Then, I turned toward the other passengers, an elderly couple, a middle-aged businessman, a group of college students. I took a deep breath and raised my voice. "Excuse me, everyone." The murmuring around us quieted as all eyes turned to me. "I just want to take a moment to appreciate my husband," I said, my voice trembling as if I were overwhelmed with emotion. "Even though I'm 7 months pregnant, he insisted I give up my seat for his secretary. He always teaches me to be selfless." A stunned silence fell over the cabin. Lily's eyes widened in horror. Adam shot up from his seat. "What the hell are you?" "Oh, don't be shy, honey," I interrupted, my voice loud and clear. "I just think it's important for everyone to see what a considerate, loving man you are." Someone snickered. Then another. A college girl gasped, whispering, "Are you serious? She's pregnant, and he made her stand for his mistress?" A businessman shook his head in disgust. "What a scumbag." The elderly woman across from me glared at Adam. "Shameful. Absolutely shameful." Adam's face twisted in rage, but I wasn't done. I swayed slightly, making a show of gripping the seat for support. "I just hope the baby doesn't suffer because of my selfishness," I murmured. Gasps erupted. A young man shot to his feet. "Ma'am, take my seat." "No, take mine," another voice called. Suddenly, everyone was offering me their seat, but I simply smiled. "I appreciate it, but my husband said I should stand. After all, Lily needs the seat more than me." Lily was visibly trembling now, her hands clenched into fists. "Stop it," she hissed. "You're making a scene." I looked at her innocently. "Oh, Lily, I'm just showing how much Adam loves you." The whispers turned into open condemnation. "What kind of man does this? I can't believe he's letting his pregnant wife stand for his mistress. This is disgusting." Adam's jaw clenched. "Let's go." He grabbed my wrist, his grip tight, but I yanked my arm away. "Oh no, Adam. We have 10 more hours on this train. You wouldn't want to leave Lily behind, would you?" Lily shrank into the seat, trying to avoid the burning glares of the other passengers. Adam, humiliated and furious, had no choice but to sit down and endure the shame. I smiled to myself. This was only the beginning. Chapter 2, Unmasking the Truth. The train ride continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Gone was the usual indifference that hung between Adam and me. Now, he was visibly uncomfortable, his every move betraying the seething rage boiling beneath the surface. He could no longer maintain his facade of calm, and his grip on his phone tightened as he glared at me from across the aisle. The other passengers, who had initially shown sympathy, slowly returned to their own business, but I noticed the occasional glances their way. Their judgment lingered, hanging in the air like a cloud that Adam could no longer escape. But I wasn't done yet. I had only just begun to peel back the layers of my past and reveal the true nature of Adam and Lily's betrayal. Lily, on the other hand, shrank further into her seat, her posture stiff and rigid. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the rapid rise and fall of her chest as she fought to keep her composure. She knew, just like I did, that I was no longer the meek, forgiving wife who had once begged for Adam's attention. I leaned back, the subtle pressure in my abdomen a reminder of the life I carried. This baby, my second chance, would not be subjected to the same neglect and pain I had endured. I would not allow Adam and Lily to continue their mockery of me. Suddenly, Adam snapped. "Are you done?" he seethed, his voice low but full of venom. I smiled, unbothered by his fury. "Done with what, Adam?" "This charade," he hissed, his words sharp as a knife. "You think you're the victim? You want to embarrass me in front of everyone? This is childish." I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eyes. "You're right. I should have been more obedient. But this time, Adam, I'm not going to sit quietly and let you treat me like dirt." Adam's face twisted in disbelief. "So now you're going to turn into a martyr? Play the victim for everyone?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Adam. I'm not the victim. I'm the one who's going to make sure you pay for everything you've done to me." Lily, still nervously tapping her fingers on the armrest, glanced between us. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "This is ridiculous. You're only embarrassing yourself." I turned to her, my eyes cold. "You think you're safe, don't you, Lily?" She flinched, but I pressed on. "You think Adam's going to choose you, don't you? That after all this, he'll finally see you as more than just his secretary. But I'm not going to let you walk away from this without facing the consequences." The train rocked as it sped along the tracks, but the silence that followed my words felt like a suffocating weight. Adam opened his mouth to speak but was interrupted by the conductor's announcement that we would be stopping at the next station. I took my chance. As the train slowed, I stood up, my hands instinctively placed on my belly. "I'm getting off here," I said calmly. Adam's head snapped up, confusion flickering across his face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not going to sit here any longer and let you continue this charade," I said, my voice firm. I'm leaving, and I'm going to make sure you regret what you did. Lily's face paled. You can't just leave. We're not finished here. But I was already walking toward the door. As the train doors slid open, I turned back to face Adam, my eyes locking with his. This is only the beginning, Adam. You and Lily will pay for what you've done to me, and you'll regret underestimating me. I stepped off the train, feeling the cool breeze against my skin, and didn't look back. I had made my first move. And it would be the last mistake Adam ever made. Chapter 3, A New Path. The train doors closed behind me with a final, echoing thud. The sound seemed to reverberate through me, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. My heart raced, but not from fear, no, I felt a strange, exhilarating sense of liberation. The weight I had carried for so long, the suffocating ties to Adam and his betrayal, was finally being lifted. The station was quieter than I had expected, with only a few scattered passengers rushing toward the exit or waiting by the platform. I took a deep breath, letting the cool spring air fill my lungs. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't look back at the train. I didn't need to. The image of Adam, standing there helpless, fuming with anger as I walked away, was enough. He had no idea what was coming. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. Hello? Mrs. Lee, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's me, Haley. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by a surprised gasp. Haley? Oh my God, is everything okay? I'm fine, I reassured her, though my hands trembled slightly. I need your help. There was no hesitation in her response. Anything. What happened? Where are you? I'm at the train station, I said quietly. I just walked away from Adam. I've had enough of his betrayal. I can't live this lie anymore. I need to start over. I need to disappear, for good this time. Haley, Mrs. Lee's voice softened, filled with concern. You don't have to do this alone. I'll help you. Just tell me what you need. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I need a place to stay. Somewhere away from everything, away from him, from all the memories. I can arrange that, she replied without hesitation. I know a place, a secluded little cabin in the mountains. It's far enough from the city, and you'll have the peace and privacy you need. Thank you, I whispered, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I don't know what I'd do without you. Don't worry about it. I'm coming to pick you up right now. Stay where you are, and I'll be there soon. As I ended the call, I stood there, rooted to the spot, for a few moments longer. The wind tousled my hair, and the hum of the station faded into the background. A quiet determination grew inside me. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I had been pushed to my limits, but in the process, I had found strength I didn't know I had. Adam had underestimated me, thinking I would continue to be the obedient wife he could control, but now he would see just how wrong he was. It wasn't just about getting away from him. It was about reclaiming my life. After what felt like an eternity, a black car pulled up to the curb, and Mrs. Lee stepped out, her face kind and welcoming. She rushed over to me, pulling me into a warm embrace. Let's get you out of here, she said softly. I nodded, unable to stop the tears that threatened to fall. But these weren't the tears of the helpless woman who had once begged for Adam's love. No, these were tears of relief, of freedom. The car ride to the cabin was quiet, and I allowed myself a moment of peace, my hand resting on my belly. The baby was moving again, and the sensation brought a small smile to my lips. This child, this precious new life, would never know the pain I had suffered. And for that, I would fight with everything I had. When we arrived at the cabin, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The place was modest but beautiful, nestled among tall trees with a small stream nearby. It was perfect. Mrs. Lee helped me inside, setting me up in a cozy room with soft blankets and a comfortable bed. I hadn't realized how exhausted I was until I lay down, my body sinking into the mattress. "You can stay here as long as you need," Mrs. Lee said, her voice full of compassion. "You don't have to rush anything. Just take your time and heal." I nodded, grateful beyond words. The next morning, as the sun streamed through the window, I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't running from Adam and Lily forever. I wasn't running away from my problems. I was simply recharging, preparing for the war ahead. Because, this time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had a second chance, one that I would use to make sure Adam and Lily paid for everything they had done to me. And I was going to make sure that my baby, the child who would grow up surrounded by love and protection, would never have to witness the pain I had suffered. It was time to take control. It was time for me to be reborn. Chapter 4, The Beginning of the Plan. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and fresh earth. The little cabin I had sought refuge in was a quiet haven, far from the bustling city where Adam and Lily continued to live their lives, oblivious to the storm I was about to bring down upon them. As I sat on the small porch, a cup of tea warming my hands, I took a deep breath, my mind racing through the steps of my plan. It wasn't enough to just escape them. I had to ensure that they would feel the consequences of their betrayal, and I needed to do it in a way that would protect my dignity and my future. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. I ran my fingers gently over my belly, feeling the soft flutter of movement. The baby kicked, a reminder that this was no longer just about me. I had someone to protect now, someone who would be born into a world of love and security, free from the deceit that had marred my own life. Over the next few days, I took solace in the peace of the cabin, resting, eating healthily, and allowing myself to gather the strength I needed. But rest was only part of the equation. I knew Adam wouldn't take this sitting down, and I had to be prepared for when he came after me. It was time to re-enter the world, to start gathering the pieces of my life and plan my next moves. The first step was making sure that Adam and Lily knew I was no longer the passive, obedient wife they could take advantage of. I wasn't just going to disappear quietly, I would make my presence known, even from this distance. I reached for my phone, pulling up a contact I hadn't called in months, my lawyer, Derek. He was sharp, reliable, and most importantly, discreet. I needed someone who could help me secure the legal and financial footing I'd need to reclaim my independence. The phone rang twice before Derek picked up. "Haley? Is everything okay?" His voice was concerned, but there was an edge of professionalism that reassured me. "I'm fine," I said, exhaling slowly. "But I need your help." "Of course. What's going on?" "I'm separating from Adam," I said, my voice steady. "And I need to make sure I'm protected. I want a divorce, and I want full custody of my child." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then he responded, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "I understand. I'll need all the details, everything you've got. I'll prepare the paperwork and start investigating Adam's financials. If he's hiding anything, we'll find it." "Thank you, Derek. I don't want him to get away with this. I need to make sure he never hurts me again." "I've got your back," Derek replied. "Just give me the green light, and we'll get started." After the call, I felt a sense of determination surge within me. Adam wouldn't know what hit him. But I had to be careful. I couldn't act recklessly, not when so much was at stake. The days that followed were a blur of planning, calls, and research. I dug deep into Adam's finances, his business dealings, anything that could be used against him. I wasn't just going to get a divorce, I was going to make sure that I had a financial safety net that would secure my future and my child's future. I kept my distance from the city, only venturing out for supplies and to meet with Derek. But soon enough, I received word that Adam was starting to look for me. He was desperate. His attempts to reach me through calls and messages only fueled my resolve. But I didn't respond. Not yet. It wasn't time. Adam needed to feel the absence of my presence before I allowed him back into my life, if ever. He needed to know what it felt like to lose everything, and he would. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of herbal tea, a new message from Adam popped up on my phone. It was long and filled with desperation. "Haley, I know things have been bad between us, but please, don't leave me. I can fix this. We can fix this. I'm sorry, okay? I don't want to lose you, not like this. Please talk to me." I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell him exactly how I felt, to let him know that I wasn't the same woman who had been silently suffering by his side. But I resisted. This was part of the plan. I had to make him sweat. I had to make him realize the consequences of his actions. And so, I ignored the message, letting the silence speak louder than words. The next step was taking the legal route. With Derek's help, I arranged a meeting with a private investigator. I needed to ensure that Adam's affair with Lily was documented, along with any other potential betrayals. I needed to build a case that would leave Adam with no way out. Weeks passed, and every day I grew stronger, more focused. I was no longer the passive wife who had put up with Adam's lies. I was now a woman on a mission, and no one, especially not Adam, was going to stand in my way. As I prepared for the next phase of my plan, one thing was certain, my rebirth had only just begun. And when it was all over, Adam would regret ever underestimating me. I was done being his doormat. Now, I was the one in control. Chapter 5, Rebuilding and the First Blow. The days grew longer as the spring season fully embraced the quiet life I had started to build. The cabin, nestled in the mountains away from the chaos of city life, was becoming a sanctuary. I'd never imagined that I could feel at peace in such solitude, but with every passing day, I felt the strength returning to me, little by little. My plan was slowly taking shape, and the first phase was already in motion. Derek had done his part, and I was about to get what I needed to secure a solid footing for myself and my unborn child. But even with the wheels of justice turning, Adam's desperation grew. I hadn't expected him to make his first move so soon, but one evening, as I sat down to dinner, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting any visitors, but I cautiously rose and peered through the window. It was Adam. My heart skipped a beat as memories of our life together flooded back, before the lies, before the betrayal, before he'd shattered everything. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, to let him know that this time, things would be different. But I resisted. This wasn't the time for that. Instead, I turned away and returned to my seat, deciding to ignore him. But he wasn't one to back down easily. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. And then, a knock on the door. I stood still, my hand resting on the table as I debated what to do. Finally, I walked over to the door and opened it, my face expressionless. "Haley, Adam's voice cracked with emotion, his eyes desperate. Please, let me in. We need to talk. I didn't move to let him inside. Instead, I crossed my arms and looked at him coldly. Why, Adam? Why should I let you in? What more is there to say? You made your choice. You made your bed. His face tightened as he tried to reach for my arm, but I stepped back. You're not welcome here, I said, my voice firm, despite the tremor I felt inside. His eyes softened for a moment, but there was also anger building behind them. Haley, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please. Come back. I'll fix everything. I let out a bitter laugh. You think it's that simple? You think you can just fix this? You can't, Adam. Not anymore. I could see the frustration in his eyes as he struggled to find the right words. But none would come. He was standing on the threshold of a life he had taken for granted, and now that it was slipping through his fingers, he was scrambling to hold on. I've changed, Haley, he said, his voice pleading. I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. But I love you. And I want to fix this. I shook my head. You don't get to tell me you love me now. Not after everything. Without waiting for his response, I closed the door in his face, locking it behind me. My heart pounded, but I stood tall. I had made my choice. I had to stick to it. I took a moment to calm myself before sitting back down. But my thoughts were a whirlwind. Adam's visit wasn't the first, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. He was persistent, and part of me was still tangled in the past, but I couldn't let myself fall back into his trap. Not again. I was still processing the emotions of that brief encounter when I received a message from Derek. It was time to move forward with the legal proceedings. Haley, I've gathered the evidence we need. We're filing for divorce tomorrow. I'll make sure you get what you deserve. I stared at the message for a long moment, the words settling in. Tomorrow. It was really happening. The relief I'd been expecting didn't come. Instead, a feeling of cold determination filled me. I was no longer the timid, obedient wife. I had become someone else, a woman who had learned to stand on her own, who would fight for her own happiness and her child's future. The next day, everything moved quickly. Derek arranged the paperwork, and I signed the divorce documents, officially severing the final thread that had tied me to Adam. He couldn't deny what he had done anymore. The truth was out, and now he would have to face the consequences. I couldn't help but think of the person I had once been, the woman who had suffered in silence, the woman who had done everything she could to please a man who never truly cared for her. That person was gone. And now, I was building a new life from the ashes of my past. In the days that followed, I made arrangements to transfer to a new city. I'd secured a job offer that would allow me to live independently, to raise my child without the shadow of Adam's betrayal looming over me. I kept my distance from the city, but Adam continued to reach out. His messages became more desperate, but I knew that I couldn't fall into the same pattern. I couldn't allow him to manipulate me again. One morning, as I was finishing up a meeting with a potential employer, I received a call from Derek. His tone was somber when he spoke. Haley, I've just received some disturbing news. Adam's trying to block the divorce. He's hired a lawyer to contest the terms. He's also demanding joint custody of your child. A chill ran through me. Adam had no right. None. I had already made it clear that I would be the sole parent, that I would be the one to raise our child without him. But I knew this was coming. Adam wasn't going to give up without a fight. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And if Adam thought he could win, he was gravely mistaken. I wasn't about to let him have my child, and I wasn't going to let him take anything from me. He had underestimated me before. But now, he would learn just how far I was willing to go to protect my family. The fight for my future had only just begun. Chapter 6, The Battle Intensifies. Days passed, but my thoughts never left the conflict that had begun between Adam and me. Despite his attempts to manipulate the situation, I could feel a sense of control building within me. Every move I made was calculated now. No longer was I that vulnerable woman who had relied on him for validation and support. Now, I was determined to take back everything he had taken from me. The day I received the news that Adam was contesting the divorce, I knew things were going to get messy. He wasn't just fighting for a piece of the past, he was trying to keep me tied to him, to keep his grip on my life and my child. Derek was the one who kept me grounded through it all. He was my lawyer and my rock, always reassuring me that he was on my side, that he had everything under control. But as much as I trusted Derek, there was a weight on my shoulders that I couldn't shake. This fight was not going to be easy. I spent the next few days preparing for the legal battle. Derek had advised me to gather all the necessary documents, proof of Adam's infidelity, evidence of his emotional neglect, and the financial records that would show his true nature. Every day felt like a new round in a never-ending struggle. But I wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. One evening, as I was sifting through papers at home, my phone buzzed. It was another message from Adam, his words as usual filled with manipulation. "Haley, you can't do this. Think of our child. We were a family once. Don't let this destroy us. I'm not asking for much, just a chance to fix everything." I stared at the message for a long time. It was the same tactic he'd always used, guilt. He was trying to pull on my heartstrings, to make me believe that there was some part of him that cared. But there was no us anymore. There was no fixing this. What we had was broken, shattered beyond repair. I replied with a simple message, my words firm: "You had your chance, Adam. You threw it away. This is over. Don't contact me again." I didn't feel the usual wave of sadness or doubt that would have come with this kind of confrontation. I felt nothing. Empty, perhaps, but not in a bad way. I was finally free. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and long nights of strategizing. Derek and I worked tirelessly, going over every detail of the case, preparing for the court hearings that were inevitably coming. Adam's lawyer was a force to be reckoned with, but Derek wasn't intimidated. He was aggressive, focused, and determined to ensure that I would win this battle. It wasn't just about the money, or the custody of our child, it was about something deeper. It was about me reclaiming my life. About proving to myself that I could stand on my own, without relying on anyone to define my worth. Then, came the day of the court hearing. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat in the cold, sterile courtroom. I could feel the weight of the entire case hanging in the air. Adam was there, sitting across from me, his eyes cold and calculating. Beside him, Lily, his mistress, the woman he had abandoned me for, sat with her arms crossed, her gaze occasionally flicking toward me with an air of superiority. But I didn't flinch. As the proceedings began, I kept my focus, remembering everything I had learned in the last few months. Every document, every detail, every memory, everything had led to this moment. Derek began to present our case, laying out Adam's lies and deceit, his infidelity, and his manipulation. Adam's lawyer tried to deflect, painting me as an unstable, vengeful wife who couldn't forgive her husband's mistakes. But every argument they made fell flat. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, my voice steady as I recounted the emotional toll Adam's actions had taken on me. I spoke about my pregnancy, about the way he had treated me when I was vulnerable. I spoke about the betrayal, the broken promises, and the devastation. And I spoke about my child, the reason I was doing this. I wasn't doing this for myself alone, I was doing it for the future I wanted for my son or daughter, a future where they would never know the pain of betrayal or the coldness of neglect. The judge listened intently, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I had control. Adam's lies could no longer hide the truth of who he was. His selfishness, his manipulation, and his lack of remorse were laid bare for everyone to see. As the hearing ended, the judge called for a brief recess before issuing a decision. I walked out of the courtroom, my heart racing, but a sense of calm beginning to settle over me. Whatever the outcome, I had stood up for myself. I had fought for my future, for my child. And that, no matter what happened next, was a victory in itself. The decision came 2 days later. The judge ruled in my favor. Not only was I granted full custody of our child, but Adam was ordered to pay child support. The divorce was finalized, and Adam had no say in the matter. He had lost. Everything he had tried to hold on to, everything he had fought for, was now out of his grasp. It felt surreal. I had done it. I had won. But the battle was far from over. Adam, defeated but not broken, would still try to find ways to manipulate the situation. And I knew that I had to be prepared for whatever came next. But for now, I stood in the middle of the storm, stronger than I had ever been before. The weight of my past had been lifted, and in its place, I felt a sense of freedom. My future was now mine to shape. And nothing, no one, could take that from me. Chapter 7, Reclaiming My Life. The days following the court ruling felt like a dream. I had finally broken free from Adam's grip, and for the first time in years, I could breathe easily. The world felt open to me in a way it hadn't since before the betrayal. But while the official battle was over, the real journey had only just begun. I spent a few days alone in the apartment, trying to wrap my head around everything. The pregnancy, the divorce, the emotional roller coaster, it was a lot to process. Yet, despite the pain of the past, there was a sense of empowerment now. I no longer felt like a victim. I was in control of my future, my happiness, and the life I was about to build for my child. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same person who had walked into that courtroom weeks ago. She was stronger, more resilient. She wasn't broken by the lies and the deceit, she had learned to rise above it. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Derek, my lawyer and the one person who had stuck by me through it all. "Haley, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Can you meet me today?" I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was more legal matters I needed to attend to. But then, I quickly reminded myself that I had to keep moving forward. I wasn't going to let anything hold me back. I quickly replied, "Of course. I'll be there in an hour." When I arrived at Derek's office, his usually calm demeanor seemed a bit more serious. He gestured for me to sit down, locking the door behind him. "Haley," he began, his voice steady but with an underlying urgency, "I have something important to share with you." After the trial, I did some digging. I found something that might change everything. I raised an eyebrow, my heart racing. "What do you mean? What did you find?" Derek slid a manila folder across the table toward me. Inside, I found a series of documents, bank statements, property records, and an array of photographs. At first, it didn't make sense to me, but as I scanned through the materials, it all started to click. These are records of transactions that Adam's been hiding, Derek explained. It appears he's been funneling money into a secret account. And the photos? Well, I believe they show some other dealings of his that weren't exactly legal. I stared at the photographs, unable to believe what I was seeing. Adam had always been a master of manipulation, but now, it seemed, there was more to his deception than I had ever known. If you're planning on keeping full custody, we might need this as leverage, Derek said carefully. This is beyond adultery or emotional neglect. This could be criminal. I sat back, trying to process the weight of this revelation. Was Adam capable of something so dark? The man I had once loved, had he been hiding even more from me? I glanced at Derek, feeling the familiar rush of anger build in my chest. What do we do with this? I asked, my voice low and determined. Derek smiled, though there was an edge of caution in his eyes. We wait for the right moment. This could be our trump card if Adam tries to make another move against you. Days passed, and I found myself wrestling with the idea of using this new information. Part of me wanted to expose Adam for everything he had done, not just to me, but to everyone who had trusted him. But another part of me felt conflicted. Was this who I was now, someone who sought revenge, who used someone else's mistakes to get ahead? The more I thought about it, the clearer the answer became. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for my child. For my future. Adam had made it clear time and time again that he was willing to betray, hurt, and deceive anyone to protect himself. I couldn't allow him to continue doing this to me or to my child. If he had gone this far, I had no choice but to defend myself, no matter what it took. In the days that followed, Adam continued to try to manipulate the situation. He made several attempts to contact me, each one more desperate than the last. But I remained resolute. I was done with his games. Then, one evening, as I sat at home, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. Haley, Adam's voice crackled through the phone. You don't have to do this. You don't have to fight me. We can fix things, for the sake of our child. We don't need to go down this road. I felt a flicker of disbelief wash over me. Adam, stop, I said firmly. I'm not interested in fixing anything. You had your chance. Don't contact me again. But he persisted. Haley, please. This is going too far. I'm sorry. I've made mistakes, but I swear, we can work through it. I didn't let his words sway me. I'm not your second choice, Adam. I'm not going to play along with your lies anymore. Leave me and my child alone. I hung up the phone, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. I had spoken my truth. There was no going back. Adam had no more power over me. As the weeks passed, my confidence continued to grow. I had everything in place. The legal battle was nearing its conclusion, and Adam's attempts to manipulate the situation were becoming increasingly desperate. But it no longer mattered. I had won. The day of the final court hearing arrived, and I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. This time, there was no fear, no uncertainty. I had done what I needed to do to protect myself and my child. The judge delivered the final verdict. Full custody was granted to me. Adam was given limited visitation rights, and the financial support I had fought for would be granted. As the decision was announced, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. It was over. For good. And as I walked out of the courtroom, my future finally in my hands, I knew that this was just the beginning. Whatever came next, I would face it with strength and determination. I wasn't the woman I had once been. I was someone new. Someone who could rise above the pain of the past and build a future filled with hope. Chapter 8, New Beginnings. The weight of the courtroom's decision had barely sunk in when I returned home. The apartment, once a place filled with tension, now felt like a sanctuary. There was no more walking on eggshells, no more pretending. It was just me, and soon, my baby, no longer tethered to a man who had only caused me pain. As I unpacked my belongings, I realized how much had changed in such a short amount of time. The freedom to make decisions without fear, the ability to shape my own destiny, it was something I hadn't known I'd been craving until now. Each item I placed back in its place symbolized not just the physical return to normalcy but a reclaiming of my life. I ran my fingers over a photo frame that held a picture of my mother and me. She had passed away years ago, but I still felt her presence in moments like this. I could hear her voice, soft and reassuring, as if telling me that I had made the right choice. That even when life felt uncertain, I could trust my own strength. In the weeks that followed, the finality of the court's ruling allowed me to take steps I hadn't even considered before. I began attending prenatal classes again, this time with a new sense of purpose. My life wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving, for me and my child. The support group I had joined during the divorce process had become a lifeline. We shared our stories, our fears, and celebrated each other's victories. I felt an overwhelming sense of solidarity and strength from the other women, each of us carving our own path to healing. The pregnancy was going smoothly, and I found joy in the small, everyday moments. I could feel the baby's movements now, gentle, but constant. It was a reminder that no matter the turmoil I had been through, something new and beautiful was growing inside me. One day, as I was walking home from a doctor's appointment, I ran into Derek, my lawyer. He had been a steady presence throughout the ordeal, always providing legal advice and personal encouragement. We stopped for a coffee at a nearby cafe, and our conversation shifted from the past to the future. "You've really come a long way," Derek remarked with a smile. "I know the past few months have been hard, but you've handled everything with more grace than most would in your situation." I felt a warm flush in my cheeks. It wasn't easy. But I'm glad I had people like you supporting me. Derek hesitated for a moment before continuing. "You know, Haley, I've been thinking about something lately. About you. You've got this fire in you, this strength. You don't have to go through life alone. There's someone out there who could help you shoulder the weight." I looked up at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "What do you mean?" "I mean that maybe it's time to let yourself be supported. To trust someone again. Not just for the sake of your child, but for you." His words lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of someone else being in my life. The thought was scary and unfamiliar, but it wasn't impossible. "I'm not sure I'm ready," I admitted. "But I'll think about it." Derek smiled. "You don't have to be ready right now. Just don't close yourself off to the possibility of happiness." That evening, as I lay in bed, I thought about Derek's words. Trust. Happiness. For the first time since the divorce, I realized that I had been so focused on protecting myself and my child that I hadn't given myself permission to embrace the idea of something more. Maybe love, in whatever form it took, wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was something to explore. The next few months flew by, and soon it was time for the baby's arrival. I had already made plans for a calm, peaceful delivery, surrounded by people who cared about me. The hospital room was warm and welcoming when I checked in, and the anticipation of finally meeting my child made everything feel surreal. I was about to bring a life into the world, and this time, I wouldn't be doing it alone. As the labor began, I leaned into the strength I had cultivated over the past year. I had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and pain, and now, I was ready to bring new life into the world. When the baby finally arrived, I held them in my arms, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. I knew I had made the right choices, not just for myself, but for my child. This was the beginning of a new chapter. A few weeks later, I received a message from Adam. It was short, simple, and to the point. I want to be a part of our child's life. Let's talk. For a moment, I thought about how much had changed. How I had changed. And then, I responded with the same confidence I'd gained throughout the last year. We'll talk when I'm ready. Right now, my priority is our child and building a future without you. It wasn't out of anger, but out of necessity. I had done the hard work of healing, of moving forward, and I wasn't about to let him disrupt the peace I had fought so hard to create. With each passing day, I learned more about what it meant to be a mother, a woman, and someone who had the power to create her own destiny. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I no longer feared it. I was ready for whatever came next, because this time, I was in control of my life. As I looked down at my child, now peacefully asleep in my arms, I realized that the hardest part of my journey was behind me. The future was uncertain, but with this new life, a new chapter, and new possibilities, I couldn't help but feel hopeful for what was to come. Chapter 9: The Decision to Move Forward. The first few months of motherhood had been a whirlwind. I had settled into a routine that felt both foreign and natural all at once. Caring for my baby was a challenge, but it was the kind of challenge I welcomed with open arms. Every sleepless night, every bottle fed, every tiny milestone my child reached made me realize just how much I was capable of. I had done it all. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I would continue to do so with my child by my side. As the days passed, I thought back to the years of my marriage to Adam. It felt like a distant memory now, one that I had learned from but no longer allowed to define me. In the past, I had been afraid of what the future would look like without him. But now, I felt empowered. I had learned to find strength in my vulnerability, and it was liberating. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, I was on the phone with Derek. I hadn't heard from him in a while, and his voice was a comfort. We had become friends during the divorce proceedings, and his words of encouragement had meant more to me than he likely realized. He had stood by me when no one else had. "How are you holding up?" Derek asked. "I'm good," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. "The baby's growing, and I'm starting to find my balance again. It's hard, but I'm getting there." "I know you will," Derek said warmly. "And remember, I'm here if you need anything." "I know," I replied. "I've been thinking about everything, Derek. I think I'm ready to move forward now, really move forward. I'm no longer the person I was a year ago. I've changed, and I want to embrace that change. I'm proud of you, Haley. You've come a long way. You deserve all the happiness in the world." His words made me smile. But even as I appreciated his support, something deep inside me knew that I wasn't just ready to move forward, I was ready to find something new. A part of me, a small part that I had kept tucked away for so long, was ready for love again. But this time, it would be love on my terms. Weeks passed, and I continued to navigate the challenges of motherhood. My life had been on hold for so long, and now that I was free of the shackles of my past, I realized how much I had missed. I'd missed the joy of being myself, the pleasure of being in control of my destiny. One afternoon, I was at the park with my child, pushing the stroller while the sun shone brightly above. I was lost in my thoughts when I heard a voice calling my name. I turned, and there, standing across the park, was Adam. He looked different, he looked older, wearier, but his expression was sincere. "Haley," he said, approaching cautiously. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer immediately. I wasn't sure what I felt. Part of me wanted to walk away and keep going with my life. But another part of me felt like this was the conversation I had been waiting for, a conversation that might finally close this chapter once and for all. I nodded. "Okay. Let's talk." We found a bench in the shade, and Adam sat beside me. He was quiet for a moment before speaking, his voice softer than I had ever heard it before. "I know I've made mistakes, Haley. I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. And I know I can't undo what I've done. But I'm asking you, as the mother of our child, to give me a chance to be a better person. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm willing to work for it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent so long angry and hurt, but now, in this moment, I felt a different emotion, pity. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet understanding that we both had to move on from the past. "I'm not sure if I can ever forgive you, Adam," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I can't keep holding on to resentment either. I'm moving forward with my life. I want the best for our child, but I've learned that the best doesn't mean staying in a broken relationship. It means healing." Adam's face fell, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. I've let you down. And I'll respect your decision. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, Haley. For everything." The conversation felt final. It wasn't the closure I had imagined, but it was enough. We both had our own paths to walk, and I no longer needed his approval or his apology to move forward. I had found my strength, and I was no longer willing to let my past define my future. Chapter 10, A New Chapter. It had been 6 months since my encounter with Adam. My child was thriving, and so was I. I had regained my confidence and peace, and I was finally content with the life I had built for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and it was enough. I had come to understand that forgiveness wasn't for the person who had wronged you, it was for yourself. By letting go of the bitterness and anger, I had freed myself to embrace the future with open arms. I no longer felt tethered to the past. One evening, I was at the park with my child again, sitting on a bench and watching as they played on the swings. It was a simple moment, but it was everything I had fought for. I had a future now, a future where I was in control. As I looked around, a familiar face appeared in the distance. It was Derek. He had been a constant presence in my life since the divorce, and I had come to realize that he wasn't just a friend, he was someone who understood me in ways no one else could. He smiled when he saw me, and I smiled back. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic confession of love. It was just a quiet understanding between two people who had both been through their own struggles and come out the other side stronger. "Hey, Haley," Derek said as he approached. "Hey," I replied, my heart a little lighter than before. "Can I sit?" I nodded, and he sat beside me. We both watched the sunset as the day turned to evening. It was peaceful, and in that moment, I realized that sometimes, happiness didn't come from grand plans or expectations, it came from the simple moments of connection. "Life's funny, isn't it?" Derek said after a long silence. "You spend so much time trying to figure out what comes next, and then one day, you just realize that it's already happening." I looked over at him, meeting his eyes. Yeah, it is funny. But I'm glad I'm here. Derek smiled, and I could feel a shift between us, something that had been growing quietly. Maybe it wasn't love yet, but it was something. Something real, something worth exploring. As I looked down at my child, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. With Derek beside me, with my child in my arms, I was ready for whatever came next. The past no longer had a hold on me, and the future was full of endless possibilities. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The end.